that again. Good evening, everyone. We'll call to order the meeting for Thursday, November 1st. Elaine, would you please call the roll?
Ex officio Board Member Bruins, Board Member Carr, Board Member Chavez, alternate Board Member Cortese, alternate Board Member Davis, Board Member Dieppe, alternate Board Member Harney, alternate Board Member Hendricks, Board Member Jones, Board Member Camis,
Here.
Board Member McAllister,
Here.
Board Member Nunez, Board Member Perales, alternate Board Member Rennie, Board Member Valladenathan, Board Member Yeager, Vice Chairperson O'Neill.
Here.
Chairperson Liccardo.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you. Please join me as we pledge allegiance. Thank you. Thank you. We're on to item 1.3, orders of the day. We have an addendum to tonight's agenda. The first is an update on the C2 Next Generation Clipper under item 8.1, the General Manager report. The second item is 8.1.8.x, to receive an overview of VTA outreach and public engagement. Are there any other recommended changes to the printed agenda? If not, we'll entertain a motion. Ask to make. And that does incorporate those changes?
Yes.
Thank you, Director Camis. Is there a second? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? That passes. Now we're on to awards and commendations. Item 2.1 is a recognition of Home First. Beatrice Ramos, Support Services Director for Home First, will receive our VTA's Community Partnership Recognition Award, and Brandy Childress will provide more information.
Good evening, members of the board. I'd like to welcome up Beatrice Ramos. Home First is a leading provider of services, shelter, and housing opportunities to the homeless and those at risk of homelessness in Santa Clara County. Home First serves more than 4,000 adults, veterans, families, and youth each year and is relentlessly focused on eliminating barriers to housing and creating stability for everyone. This nonprofit organization is contracted by the City of San Jose and partners with VTA to help address community and safety concerns related to homeless encampments on VTA-owned property. Home First operates outreach teams that are dispatched to encampments on VTA property after a concern has been reported or before a site cleanup. Their team helps homeless individuals find emergency shelter, showers, laundry, meals, medical services, case management, employment, training, and more. This role is a crucial in encouraging people to find permanent housing rather than starting a new encampment or returning to an old one. Home First performs this role admirably for government organizations like VTA, responding quickly, accurately, and professionally when we report an encampment and ask for assistance. VTA is delighted to honor Home First tonight, and I would like to personally thank Ms. Ramos for attending this evening, the same night that Home First is holding their 9th annual fundraising gala. Thank you for being here.
All right, we're on to public comment. I encourage those with any customer service concerns to contact the Customer Service Department after you make your comments. The contact information is there up there on the screen, phone numbers and email. We'll begin with Sunil Sharma, followed by Blair Beekman and Roland LeBrun. Welcome, Mr. Sharma.
Good evening. Thank you. I am here to inform you that the height of the seats on the blue buses running on Route 522 is too high for the ridership. I noticed that many of the riders on these buses are not able to comfortably rest their feet on the floor. Sometimes they have their feet dangling above the floor. As a result, there is excessive pressure on the back of the thigh, which impairs blood circulation in the legs. A bus takes over 2 hours to traverse the entire 522 route during peak traffic times. Sitting for long time periods with impaired blood circulation to the legs can cause deep vein thrombosis, or DVT, which is a blood clot in the vein in the leg. Deep vein thrombosis is a life-threatening condition and always results in a long period of hospitalization. Incidents of DVT due to the cause I just described represent a legal liability for the county. Furthermore, given that a large percentage of the ridership does not have health insurance, these incidents of DVT represent uncompensated patient load for the county healthcare system, especially for the hospital system. A very large percentage of riders in the county are of Asian or Central American, South American ancestry. Hence, the average height of the ridership on public transit in Santa Clara County is significantly less than the average height for the entire nation. I urge the VTA to lower the height of the seats on all of its transit vehicles in order to match the physical characteristics of the ridership. Doing so would enable a safer and more comfortable travel experience for the riders.
Carmen?
I urge the
Sir?
VTA to suspend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir,
Okay.
Heidi Samuels is standing right there in the back, and she can talk to you further about this
Okay,
issue.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Beekman?
Hi. I'm interested in the Big Belly project, as you know, in downtown San Jose. It's been about 6 months now since it's been up, I think since February. And this was my own personal deadline when I felt as a board you should have a kind of a clear idea what exactly you're going to be doing with the Big Belly in downtown. You know, I guess in this time, I hope we've learned, all of us, a lot of lessons. I hope it's been just a game changer in how we view technology in San Jose. I hope we've all had kind of that mental breakdown, I guess, and mental clarity to really start to see what we're doing with technology at this time. And you know, it's still, you know, for my own self, I understand that you guys may need this technology. The Big Belly offers such an array of different choices and apps that you need it for many variety of things downtown. Luckily, we're hopefully learning how to not use it for law enforcement practices such as ShotSpotter, eavesdropper technology, when there isn't that much of a gunshot problem in downtown San Jose. I mean, it's lessons like that I think we're really learning, hopefully, for the Big Belly. And, you know, the science projects that it's needed for, totally understandable. It's still my hope, you know, when I understand the smart trash can is obviously a gem and a really nice, important thing. But it's still my hope that within the next year that you can, out of just decency and principle, really consider to take out the Big Belly or lessen its numbers and, you know, just really be aware that this is a time that we have to really reevaluate what we think of technology overall and how it can be harmful and dangerous. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. LeBrun?
Thank you. So what I'd like to do is to give you some strong positive feedback on the warm string extension and my own experience. In the morning, I got very good connections with 5-minute transfers between the light rail, the 181 and BART. And potentially you have an issue southbound because the demand is so heavy that the 181 cannot possibly handle the capacity. It's the first time in my life where I have seen a line for a VTA bus that is longer than a line for a Google bus. You may want to look at this. Now, the best part to me as a senior is the cost. It's $3.50 to get to San Francisco. I mean, you can't beat that. You've got to spread the rumor. You know, we have got a deal going for you here. On the way back, believe it or not, I got to ride in the first train of the future. I mean, it's unreal. It's just like being in Paris. And you can actually hear the announcement. I've never been able to hear anything that the driver said on a BART train. You can hear it, and you got a real-time map that tells you exactly what line you're on and where you are in the network. The only thing I'd like to say there is these are facing the blue chairs. They used to face the yellow chairs. So guess what? I now sit in a blue chair. In the afternoon, I had a little bit problem with the connections. I don't know why the 181 waited so long, but I could see my train in downtown San Jose, but I couldn't get on it. So that it basically has 15 minutes to the trip. At night, also a very good experience. It's very interesting because at night the 181 goes to the Great Mall. I don't know why it goes there. It misses the light rail, but guess what? By the time I get down to downtown, I'm actually 13 minutes ahead of the light rail I just missed at the Great Mall. That just tells you how good the 181 is. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll proceed now to committee reports. The Citizens Advisory Committee Chair report is in your reading folder. There's no PAC report today. And the Governance and Audit Committee met today. We received a presentation of the audited CAFR and the financial reports for Amalgamated Transit Union Pension Plan and Retirees Other OPEB Trust for fiscal year 18. We'll see that on our agenda next month. We also had a closed session discussion on the GM performance evaluation. So more to come. On to the, I'm sorry, which chair? Oh, we do? Oh, please forgive me. Chair Neal will provide a report on the Administration and Finance Committee.
Okay, great. Thank you. The Administration and Finance Committee met on October 18th, 2018. The items that we reviewed and recommended to place on tonight's consent agenda are Item 6.2, Delta Dental Contract Renewal. Item 6.3, Sole Source Contract with Ventec Transit, Inc. for the ticket vending machines. And we had a discussion on the rationale for the sole source contract. That was interesting. Item 6.4, contracts for the general banking and institutional custody. And item 6.5, FY 2018 Statement of Revenues and Expenses for the period ending June 30th, 2018. So unless there are any questions, that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Chair Neal. And Chair Camus will provide a report on the Congestion Management Program and Planning Committee.
Thank you, Chair. The Congestion Management Program and Planning Committee met on October 18th. We discussed items 6.6, the Lifeline Transportation Program projects, 6.7, the VRF Fund Advance to the US 101 SR 85 Interchange Project. Staff provided a joint presentation for items 6.8 and 6.9, the multimodal improvement plans for Mountain View and Santa Clara. After some clarification questions on these items, the committee recommended board approval and them to be placed on tonight's consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on that item? If not, we'll move on. There are no policy advisory board reports, and the Ad Hoc Financial Stability Committee Chairperson's report, I believe our Chair, Jeannie Bruins, will provide a report on this item.
So the Ad Hoc Financial Stability Committee had planned to reconvene next Friday, November 9th. Unfortunately, I was informed today that one of our board members will be out of town on that date. Since our intention is to come to some actionable recommendation, and we need the three board members there, we are canceling the November 9th meeting, and we will be reconvening on a date to be determined.
Okay. Over the Thanksgiving break, I'm sure. Thank you. Okay, great. We're on to, any questions on that? No, okay. Nice try, Director Camus. All right, on to the consent agenda. This is item 6. Consent agenda are items 6.1 to 6.9. I have a couple of items on which members of the public would like to speak. And so I'll ask Mr. Beekman to come forward on those items. I would like to pull items 6.8 and 6.9 for discussion. These are the multimodal improvement plans. Are there any other items anyone would like to pull? Director McAllister.
6.5.
6.5, okay.
I'd like to recuse myself from item 6.2.
Okay, Councilman, Director Camus is recused from item 6.2. Any items to be pulled beyond those? Okay, Mr. Beekman, would you like to be heard on 6.1 and 6.6?
Yeah, I just quickly saw item 6.6, and bus shelter help programs, I guess, of some sort. I always am learning to talk about the County Women's Initiative and the City of San Jose Women's Rights, Bill of Rights, and that kind of work. It could, I just love to say it now that it can really help out with your situations that you're working with, I feel. I wish I could learn more about these programs myself, but, off the top of my head, I just think it can make a real good, it obviously is a real good reference point for yourselves, and I just want to reaffirm that fact here. And I guess for item 6.1, which is about the minutes of October 4th, item 4.1 is you talked about Caltrain financing, and I had spoken on this in San Jose City Council before recently that, and I think I mentioned it here, that the federal government is offering a lot of funding right now for cities and counties in California. I don't know if it's nationwide or just statewide, but I just hope we're really, really wary of that money that we're getting, and that we've really learned some important lessons from the mid-2000s, that when the federal government dumps tons of money onto us, we don't just start making up crazy projects or just spending it willy-nilly. We have to really be patient now and really practice good practices, and I think we're all learning that. I think here, even with, say, your gas and petroleum issues of the mid-2000s, or 2015s, that you really learn to calm down. I hope that's important lessons for yourself that can be a good example that you have to be really fiscally responsible now, and that can make better accountability decisions for tech and all that stuff. So please watch these big federal budgets this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, Mr. Beekman, I'll hold your card for item 6.8 until we take that item up. Okay? Great. So we'll entertain a motion now on the remaining consent items. That is 6.1 through 6.4, 6.6, and 6.7. Is there a motion?
And I'll second, and I just want to record a no vote on 6.4.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And there's a motion and a second from Vice Chair O'Neill. Any other comment? All right. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that was one recusal for Director Camus and a no vote, Director Chavez, on 6.4. Oh, good point. Okay, can we have a separate motion on 6.4? Okay, that's from Vice Chair O'Neill and a second from Director Davis. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, one no. I think that we got that one right. Here we go. We're on to the regular agenda, and just one item. That is the Silicon Valley Express Lanes Program Ordinance. We are going to consider the proposed ordinance and direct that proposed ordinance will be placed on the agenda for next regularly scheduled board meeting for adoption. This was deferred from our last meeting to give staff an opportunity to meet with other toll operators and lay the input received from this board. Carolyn is here, and along with Murali, and they will report on this item.
Good evening. We were here last month to talk about the toll ordinance for the Silicon Valley Express lanes, and we went back last month and talked to some of our other toll operators in the region. So we are here tonight to introduce the Silicon Valley Express lane. Morelli will go through that as well. So tonight will be the first reading. We will be back in December for adoption of it.
I think the
Engineering
mic's,
Manager.
there we go.
There we go.
So as Carolyn mentioned, in October, we took we took the input from board from the October meeting, and we did three main things. One is to complete discussions on toll discount for clean air vehicles with our Bay Area Express Lanes partners. The second one, what we did is we revised the toll ordinance to allow flexibility to change the toll discounts without having to amend the toll ordinance. And so that was another key input that we received. And we also have revised the toll discount table to provide added clarity. So in a nutshell, the toll ordinance provides three elements. The very first element is that it allows VTA to collect toll violation fees. And the key aspect of that is the penalties associated with those violation fees are consistent with that is being used by all other toll operators within the Bay Area. The second element of it is the the toll ordinance is to offer discount for single occupant clean air vehicles. So VTA staff had detailed discussions with other Bay Area Express Lanes partners on this issue, and the outcome of this discussion is something that both the Bay Area Express Lanes partners as well as VTA staff strongly recommend that we provide a 50% toll discount for the single occupant clean air vehicles. This is mainly to ensure there is seamlessness in the operating rules as you use the express lanes in the Bay Area, as you move from one county to another county, as well as and between adjacent highways, express lanes, and when you pass from one express lanes to another. Furthermore, having different discount rates further complicates the operating rule for the public to understand. So in essence, all the partners felt that it's very important to keep it simple for the public so that they can understand. If you're a carpooler, if you're getting a carpooler discount, you get 50%. If you're a single occupant clean air vehicle, then you get a 50% discount. It's easy to understand, and it is the same regardless of whichever express lanes that you use in the Bay Area. The other aspect of it is we did raise the concerns or the input provided by our board. The Bay Area Express Lane partners are open to the fact to being flexible to change that toll discount in the future if the condition warrants it. The third element of the toll ordinance is to be able to change or to be prepared for future changes that's happening on the express lanes corridors in the Bay Area. Caltrans is looking at increasing the minimum occupancy to HOV 3+ on several of the highways that ring around the bay, and this include express lanes that falls within VTA jurisdiction. And as such, in this case, we are really looking at offering a 50% discount for HOV or with the 2 people in the vehicle when the minimum occupancy requirement is 3+. So just to break down the different action items that's being taken over the past on many of these items. In September 2016, VTA board already took an item to say that all users of the express lanes need to carry transponder, as well as had a support stand to increase the hours of operation for express lanes from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. The toll ordinance that we are now discussing is really looking at those three elements of when we have a violation enforcement system, that we can collect a violation fees. We want to provide a discount for single occupant clean air vehicles, as well as we want to provide a discount for 2 people when there's a HOV 3+ minimum requirement. And Caltrans is the approving authority with regard to hours of operation, and as well as setting the minimum occupancy requirement. So we really understand the need to convey all this message to the public, to keep it simple, and to have this extensive outreach. And so for that, actually, we have our Brandy Childress to my right here, who's the VTA Media and Public Affairs Manager, who will take you through the planned communication plan.
Thank you, Morelli. Good evening again, members of the board. I'm just going to quickly touch upon some of the communication and outreach efforts underway to prepare drivers for the new rules that will be implemented with Phase 2 of State Route 237 express lanes that are opening summer 2019. The audience we are trying to reach and inform are current and potential users of this facility. Because this audience is so broad, we are going to leverage traditional media sources to help spread the word. We have started to do this campaign because of the new Clean Air Vehicle Decal program that will be in effect come January 1, 2019. It's a good hook for us to share what the future of express lanes in Santa Clara County will look like. The new lanes, new rules image you see here is also the message that will be on banners that will cover all the newly installed overhead gantries in the corridor to drive people to more information about the new operating rules on our website. Strategies we will use to inform the public will also be targeted to those with existing Fast Track accounts and those who drive this corridor in general. I mentioned leveraging traditional media and corridor signage already. We plan to run radio advertisements during peak drive times, collaborate with our partners at CHP and Caltrans to help share information. We'll include information with Fast Track statements, create collateral that can be shared with car dealerships in the DMV, for example, so that they may disseminate the information, and then also use our digital tools like videos to share on social media and other websites. We've already started to share information with the public related to the toll ordinance process. The result of that board decision will be shared widely using the strategies and tools I mentioned earlier. And with that, I think we're opening up to questions.
Okay, questions of the board? Director McAllister?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the motion. Or was there a motion?
Yeah, there is a motion, but it's open for questions.
Okay, for questions? Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned on here that you did talk to the other agencies and they mentioned that they're open to discounts. Did you ask them why that Southern California goes with 15% discount on clean vehicles?
Yes, they are aware of what LA Metro has decided for 15% discount. The one thing that we do in the Bay Area, and we do well, is we have regional consistency in almost a lot of things we are doing. For example, in Southern California, each of the operator have their own back office. They issue their own transponders, and they set their own rules. And as a result, when new operators, adjoining operators come into play and then they are going to be setting these rules, there might be a situation for inconsistency. That is not the case for Bay Area. We have one back office, and even the toll violation fees, the resolution that the BADA has is the same that every one of us are using, and the carpool discount rate is the same. So I think this is what was the fundamental aspects of what all the Bay Area Express Lane partners discussed, to maintain that consistency. They are willing. They are very willing to discuss this again if we think that we made a wrong decision or maybe it's not appropriate based on the operational impacts. They are willing to look at it and be flexible to change that. And when we do that change, I think the goal is to change it together to keep it consistent, because we want to keep things simple and seamless for the customers.
So is there any talk about possibly that Santa Clara County, trying to be an innovative leader, could have a pilot program on the short distance of 237?
With specific to?
Let's say the discount. You were talking about the discount. So they were open for discounts. So possibly that Santa Clara County could go for the 15% discount on clean vehicles discount.
So I think one of the concerns are within the next few years, or actually we come online and then fairly quickly MTC comes online with 880 and they adjoin to each other, and then we'll be building our lanes will be coming online then at 85-101. That contract hopefully will be awarded next month, and San Mateo will be building theirs on 101. So they just come in sort of rapid succession in terms of openings. And so the issue was to develop one policy that's consistent so that we're moving forward on at one time. I think what we're really trying to figure out at the same time is how the sticker program is going to affect the clean air vehicle usage in the lanes. And a big issue for us to provide less discount was because they were filling. We don't think they will be as many in the lanes with the new sticker program. So that's one of the reasons why we've been talking to the Bay Area operators. We said, let's all see what happens here, what happens when we open our lanes, and then if we still see a huge increase or a huge amount of clean air vehicles, we'll look for a smaller discount, and we'll continue to move that forward. And they've all agreed when they go in with their ordinances or amend the ordinances that they currently have, that they'll allow flexibility so they can just come back to the staff, and the staff can work that through, talking to, the appropriate committees of their board or their commissions.
So on 101 coming down with the express lane, that's going to start in Redwood City, and you said it's going to go to 85? So where's the express lane going to actually start on 101?
So just to clarify, I think on 101 there is 2 projects at the moment, 101 on 101 express lanes. There's a project that is being headed by San Mateo, and there is a project that's headed by VTA. The project that's headed by VTA starts at the San Mateo County line, and it ends at Highway 85 connector on Highway 85. And on the 101, it goes all the way down to Highway 237.
Okay. But isn't there signage on all these express lanes will tell you what the fee would be as you're going along these express lanes to help clarify what someone's getting charged?
Yeah, so you'll have a variable toll message that will display the toll rate. There won't be any messages that will say what kind of discount. Signage is a very complex thing, and you have quite a bit of messaging already out there. Discounts are typically part of the business rules, so basically that will not be displayed.
Okay. So when you're doing this strategic outreach to the public, if the county decided to be a little more aggressive, that would be put out there to say this is what we're going to charge, so that there would be clear knowledge to the community. That would be one way of getting that information out to the community.
Yeah, that is our goal, to help the users know well ahead of time as to what to expect. When we open the Phase 2 express lanes opening, all users will need to carry a transponder. There'll be new hours of operation, and there will be also this discounts for clean air vehicles.
On the transponders, you have settings for single, 2, and 3. If somebody might have 2 people in there and they set it, or they could be a single and they set it for 2, is there a way to catch that person, or is it all visual?
That's where the enforcement is very challenging. So when we open phase 2 express lanes, one of the big advantage that we will see is as part of the new violation enforcement system, those users who do not carry a transponder, they will be automatically issued a violation based on the license plate they have. But for those who actually try to violate by switching the setting in the transponder, that is more challenging. Yes, that is where we do require enforcement observation by the CHP. However, there is another element that we are trying to do now that you will start seeing in the Bay Area, which is to have what I would call as an occupancy beacon. So now, if you have a setting, say if I go through there as a solo driver, but I have it on a 2+ setting, as I pass through there would be an occupancy beacon which will show 2. So it's almost I'm self-declaring it's 2, and people can see that, and so can the enforcement officer. And that's I think that's another introduction or improvement in how we can better enforce cheaters.
Would the cameras be involved in the enforcement?
No. The technology is evolving where you can install cameras that look for the number of occupants within a vehicle, but that is still evolving. It is still relatively expensive, and even if we implement that, it can only be implemented located strategically in a few locations, and it would require some right-of-way to be able to install all those equipment. So there are challenges associated with it. As we hit critical mass and the technology improves, that would in future become part of having a better enforcement technology in the express lanes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions? Yes, Director Nunez.
Thank you. So I think I had 2 questions last time, and one of them was answered already, so I appreciate that. I just want to make sure I have it correctly in my mind now. Currently, CAV discount is what?
There is not one for the CAV.
And the recommendation is 50%. Is there any place that's
50% is for single occupant.
Okay. Is there any place outside of Los Angeles where it's 15%? Is there any place else where it's something different than 50%?
Yeah, so what's happening is we are at the front end of a change that's happening. So LA Metro happens to be the first agency where the board took the action to toll the clean air vehicles. They're in the process of implementing, and they'll be doing so in the next few months. And where we are, VTA is, another 6 months beyond that. But subsequent to that, just like what Carolyn said, many of the operators are coming online to do the same. So that's why you do not see other agencies at the moment tolling clean air vehicles. But they all plan to do.
And the reason for giving CAVs a discount is what?
Well, I think it's in California, there is other overarching goals as well for environmental reasons. As you know, the governor has set targets to increase the number of electric vehicles in the state. And this going toll-free on express lanes or being able to use HOV lanes has been a great incentive for people to buy electric vehicles, to harness the travel time efficiency that they get. But however, as you might notice when you drive there during the peak periods, it's now flooded with clean air vehicles. So I think this is a nice balanced way of trying to address the issue.
And at least from what I've read, Santa Clara County has the most electric vehicles, clean air vehicles in the state. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So do you know what that percentage is, or to what point we are ahead of the other counties?
I can get you that information, but yeah. But as per county, I think now it's slightly different because Los Angeles County is an extremely huge county. But if we really look at it more specific to the size and location, the concentration in Santa Clara County is extremely high. Yeah.
So the 50% discount isn't really so much to get more persons to buy electric vehicles and or to use the lane, because we already have that, correct? So it is really, if I'm understanding you correctly, solely to be consistent with everybody else in the region.
No, I think that's true, but also the way our operations currently work at this time is that the lanes, once they hit a certain speed, we take off the express, well, we don't charge a toll any longer to single vehicles, except for Clean Air, who gets to ride free at all, because we have to shut down them as express lanes. So we only run them as HOV lanes. And so one of the reasons why we'll be looking at the Clean Air vehicles is those Clean Air vehicles that will shift, who don't want to pay, will shift, and allows more people and more mobility through those lanes, more people to drive through those lanes, with even HOVs.
Okay, did I see that in the presentation?
No, because I think last month we did the presentation and talked about the amount of vehicles that are in our lanes.
Thank you.
Director Bruins?
Yes, I just want to I want to be clear on something. A Clean Air vehicle that has a sticker today using our 237 connector during toll time, they're going for free?
That's correct.
They're not paying a toll. So the question I think was phrased is, do they have a discount? Yes, they have a discount today. It's 100%.
100%, oh yeah.
Okay, so we're moving from
I'm sorry.
100% discount down to a 50% discount. So instead of riding free, they're going to pay 50% of the toll. So we are actually going to be generating revenue with this. We're not losing revenue. We're not going as far down in terms of that discount as LA Metro, but we are, we're above the 0% discount, right? So
Yeah, sorry
I don't know if that
I'm
helps.
sorry if I confuse people.
Okay, so thank you.
Other questions? All right, member of the committee would like to speak, Mr. Beekman?
All right, thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I didn't notice you talk about ALPR use during the lecture, the presentation. And, you know, with what City of San Jose is doing, what they brought out this week with their parking, you know, man, it's a whole new ball game is starting up right now. And I'm not prepared at this moment for that. I've been talking in a certain way about certain things, and in a certain way. And, you know, when I first started working on this stuff, you know, I hope, you know, it's been 4 years I've been working on this, and a lot of people have been working on this. I hope we're at a time that it can be simply easier to begin to talk about ALPR stuff. I mean, think of 4 years ago, ALPR stuff was considered national security secrets, and we could not talk about it publicly at all. And now we can, and it's just a little bit difficult for us to do that. And it's been 4 years now. I hope we can be at the time that it can be easier for us, and we can work on it. And so, you know, because it seems like that's going to be the major function of your law enforcement practices. So this is APLR stuff 2.0. I know the County of Santa Clara has just come out with their surveillance and technology stuff ordinance that specifically lists this technology and how it can be used and its data retention, how the public can have access to the data. I mean, just a whole bright list that you can just, admire and understand how we can work with this technology, how everyone can work. And it doesn't have to be secretive, fearful, scary. It's a process for everyone, and let's hope we can really practice it, and good luck in this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beekman. Are there any other questions on this item? All right, well, we have a motion on this item already. So, Director McAllister?
Not a question. Are we at the discussion phase now that the questions are done?
Certainly.
Okay. I'm not going to support, I support putting an ordinance in place. I support everything else, but I can't support the 50% at this time. The argument, if we're going to be implementing a program, let's go to it, let's do it right away. And if we're going to eventually go down to 15 or match, let's make it seamless. Let's make it once and not have to confuse people. If our goal is to get people out of single occupancies and get them into into mass transit or VTA express buses, this isn't doing it because they're still having that option, hey, I can pay a little bit and I can stay in my car. And as VTA evolves and improves the mass transit and the express buses, I would like to that we will get those people, and by allowing them to still maintain their single occupancy and sitting in their car and getting a discount, we're sort of shooting ourselves in the foot. So I think that's why it's important that we start immediately. Silicon Valley is a leader in technology and innovation and in being green and reducing greenhouse gases. And in this case, they're not producing any greenhouse gases, but I think it sends a message that we are serious about transit, we're serious about greenhouse gases, and if we do 15%, we're still getting some generation, but we're still not, we're still sort of giving some kind of encouragement to the clean vehicles. Another thing that concerned me was that you keep saying seamless. Well, you drive down right now down a road and you don't know what county you're in, so I didn't understand that when you're talking seamless. I can only think of that if the freeways are connected from one county to the other, but right now 680 isn't connected to 237 and 101 isn't connected to 237. So maybe 237 is a little island in there. Eventually, if 101 or 880 comes down, but they could have their own way of doing things. So again, to be innovative, I support everything, but I cannot support this at the 50% discount.
All right. Other comments before we vote on this item? Director Nunez.
So I just have a question about what was going to happen in 2020. You said when they were going to have that discussion.
What is going
about
to
looking at alternatives?
Sorry, say it again.
About looking at alternatives to the 50%. I thought you had mentioned that I'm just looking at page 4, where you said there was going to be an open discussion about that 50%. Or did I miss?
So I think, so at this point, 237's coming online right now. The MTC will put 880 online relatively shortly after all of 237, or second phase of 237 comes online. And then ACTC, which is the third operator in the region, will be making the 50% toll discount. They have to do some work with their system integrator, correct? That will get done by 2020. So at 2020, all 3 operators will be operating with the same discounts, same policies across the region. And at that point, we're able then to look at how the discount works and whether we want to make some changes.
Changes around.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Chavez?
Thank you. I just wanted to add one thing, one issue to this. First of all, even though we have a lot of people in our community who are driving electric vehicles, it's still such a small percentage of the overall vehicles on the road that I do think that any opportunity that we get to encourage people to buy EVs is a good thing. And and frankly, we have some who are early adopters who were willing to go out on a limb, not really knowing how good or bad the technology was going to be. And so I think that's still a very important goal. And I for one, don't want us to lose sight of that, in part because while we are a congestion management agency, one of the core opportunities with transportation and shared transportation is improving the planet that we're all on, and hoping that it's around for our kids and our grandkids and so on. So I appreciate the discussion, and I think when we have these conversations in the future, if at all, it's important to be able to take a look at overall adoption statewide, because these routes are all connected. And I think the point you raised about regionally even trying to be connected is actually very important.
All right. Any other questions or comments? I'm going to support the staff recommendation. A couple reasons. One is I really do believe strongly in the need for regional uniformity, as has been stated, and the challenges of creating different rules in different counties is going to create not just confusion, but a lot of cost. And we are trying to make this as seamless as possible regionally. Secondly, I appreciate Director McAllister's point, but we're trying to accomplish more than one objective. We're trying to accomplish multiple objectives here. And the proliferation of electric vehicles clearly is helping us with our climate change goals, and I think every city is pretty committed to that. So I'm going to support the direction. Any other comments? All right, let's vote on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. That's approved with Director McAllister in dissent. We'll move on then to item 6.5. That's coming back to the consent calendar. That's a review and acceptance of the statement of revenues and expenses. Director McAllister, I think you had this item.
Yeah, thank you. Since we are in a, I'll let everybody grab a seat down there first, but. Considering that we are in a bit of a financial crisis here and we have an ad hoc committee that's looking into it, I was reading in here under the summary on 6.5 where it says this negative operating balance was funded from VTA Transit Fund operating reserves. And my question, and then the next line it says there is no fiscal impact as a result of this action. Well, I sort of find that interesting, is that we're using operating reserves and yet there's no action. So what is the state of our operating reserves? How long are they going to expect it to last? How much do we have and how much do we expect to use?
Going back to your earlier comment about no fiscal impact, this is comparing actual to budget. When the budget was approved, it had a fiscal impact or forecasted a negative balance of $20 million at the end of the year, based on certain service levels, based on certain assumptions about expenses and revenues. We ended the year with roughly $6 million in deficit as opposed to 20. So that's the reason we are saying there's no fiscal impact, because the deficit was lower than what we projected. There are a host of reasons, primarily because of we actually delivered or offered less service than what was budgeted. So just to answer your comment on the fiscal impact. And the second thing, I'm sorry, I didn't follow the second question.
Okay.
Around the reserves.
Yeah. How much?
Oh, state of the reserves.
State of the reserves and how fast are we using them?
Let me turn that over to Carol Lawson. She's pointing some numbers. My eyesight is a little weak. I can't read the number. Maybe she can read those numbers. So.
Yes, the preliminary unaudited FY18 ending operating reserves are $15.8 million. Sorry, $54.8 million. I believe we have said publicly that if we were to provide the level of service that were in the adopted budget, those reserves would last about 18 to 24 months, which is, again, why we have the ad hoc committee to to determine what the alternatives are to that, because it becomes quite obvious when looking at the adopted budget that we cannot afford those levels of service.
Well, may I just supplement a little bit of what Carol Lawson just said? The reserve number she talked about is just on the operating reserve. We have, I would say, 3 different discretionary reserves which the board approved. Operating reserve is one of them. There is a second one called the Sales Tax Stabilization Fund, which has a balance of about $35 million. And last but not the least, I believe it's called the Debt Reduction Fund of the Capital Reserve, which has a balance of about $5 million at the end of the year. If you take all those 3 combined, it's about $95 million in total. And that $95 million is what she mentioned would last for about 18 to 24 months.
Thank you.
Is that based on our current economic situation for the next 2 years?
That's based on if VTA were to implement the service levels approved by the board. That's one, which is, to be clear, 1.6 million bus service hours and about 190,000 light rail service hours for fiscal year 19. And also assuming all other expenses and revenues are in line with what was projected in the budget.
Are there any board policies that restrict the balance of the reserve balances? I know that one says you need to have 15%, but is there any other restrictions on or requirements on the reserve balances?
15% to the extent we have any operating surplus left over. If you have no surplus left over, obviously you cannot maintain a 15% thing.
And, okay. With this sort of a crisis, I keep saying the concern, is there, without the recommendations of the ad hoc committee, are there things being done internally within the VTA to help contain costs at this current time?
Yes. You want to take that?
Sure. We have limited filling of vacancies to ones that are required for safety or operational or administrative efficiency purposes, number one. We have also delayed the expansion of some of our services, not just the bus and light rail services, but some of the other works has been delayed in light of the financial situation. There is also just general across the board understanding that there is a deficit budget that was adopted, and trying to limit expenditures wherever that is feasible without impacting the service or the employees. That's what come to mind. Can you think of other ones?
Sure. I didn't want to mean to put Carol on the spot on that. It's always easier to come after what she has said something, to supplement that information. Yes, we have taken quite a few actions. 2 significant things we did. One was late last year in December. Actually, there was a refinancing transaction we were planning on doing it in January because the tax changes in tax law, we had to advance that to December. That's one. And another refinancing we did in September. Both resulted in collectively or combined present value savings of about $3 million or so. More importantly, we simplified the structure of our debt. They had what are called synthetic fixed options or swaps, which we simplified them. That's one. And we have also maintained a certain vacancy level. On average, I mean, it changes by month to month. On average, we are trying to maintain a vacancy rate of about 140 to 145. That's one thing. And those 2, plus, as I said earlier, even the service levels, we had budgeted a much higher service level with the anticipation of BART coming to the valley. That did not happen, so we kind of, ratcheted down the service levels we were offering. So those all contributed to some of the savings and lowering the deficit we had planned for.
Okay, thank you.
Just it's a motion from Director Camus. Is there a second? Okay, second from Vice Chair. I just had a quick question, Raj, about this, the chart that I believe that you or Carol may have been looking at relating to the reserves. That's page 2 of 2 here on 6.5A.
Correct, yeah.
I understand that our beginning operating reserve was a little more than 66 million. We've reduced it by 5.7 million to cover our shortfall this year. Then we see a line set 11, which is a transfer from local share of capital projects, or I guess that would be a 2. It's a negative 6 million. I guess that suggests that capital project money came back into the reserve?
No, it's the other way around.
Okay. So this is money that went from the reserve to capital projects.
To fund the local portion, the local VTA local share portion of the adopted budget capital, the adopted capital budget for 18 and 19. Yes.
Okay. Got it. So of the roughly $30 to $35 million in capital shortfalls that we think we have over that next couple of years, did this $6 million count against any of that, or do we still have the 30 to 35 million on top of that?
That was the shortfall from FY17.
Yeah.
Because if you'll remember, we did not make that capital transfer that we had originally budgeted to keep FY17 from being so deep into reserves that it still dug into the reserves a little bit in order to fund the 18 and 19 budget.
Got it.
The 30 to 35 that we talk about that's needed per year, we at this point we only set 5 million aside in FY18, and we're scheduled in the adopted budget to set another 5 million in FY19. So we're about 60 million short to be able to fund the projected need for the local share for the 20 and 21 budget.
Okay. Thanks, Carol. I appreciate you highlighting or explaining all that to us, because I know that's not the number we're often focused on. We're often focused on the operating. But, you know, you only need to pick up the New York Times or the Washington Post to see what the impacts are of neglecting that capital replacement and maintenance. Pretty soon you've got a system that everyone's complaining about because it's breaking down all the time, and it's not much use to anyone when they feel like they cannot rely upon a system to get to work. And so you know, that is a really big concern of mine, that we are not eating our seed corn and really doing what we got to do to maintain the basic infrastructure in working order. So we do have a very big challenge ahead, and I appreciate you clarifying that for us. Other questions on this item? Okay, we have a motion. Let's vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that passes. We're now on items 6.8 and 6.9. I really just wanted to raise one issue that's common to both. This is on the multimodal improvement plans, in this case that Mountain View and Santa Clara have submitted. And as I think about our transition into a world from level of service into a world of VMT, which is what I think the state is requiring now of all cities and counties. I know the city of San Jose has already made this transition. I'm sure other cities have or are doing that now. I'm assuming these deficiency plans, or what they're now called, I guess, the multimodal improvement plans, are going to look quite a bit different. Is that right, Chris?
I think they will look very similar in the kinds of things they're going to be proposing to mitigate the impacts of development. The criteria will change a little bit. The VMT change right now by law relates only to CEQA, and the CMP legislation still has to be changed so that it can get away from LOS. This was actually a topic of discussion at the regional CMA directors meeting a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So that still has to be changed, but I think ultimately the kinds of mitigations, the kind of things you'll see coming out of these plans will be very similar. There'll be things that will be focused on multimodal improvements rather than capacity expanding roadway projects. I think that's where the trend is going.
I guess my concern as I think about these generally is I don't see anything in the current requirements that really mandates any real performance beyond building something, right? Something gets built, we have no idea if anyone's actually going to use it or whether or not it actually reduces congestion, or as we move to VMT, reduces vehicle miles traveled. There's no real I mean, I know there's some monitoring requirement, but I'm guessing that's just around making sure the money gets spent. It's not necessarily looking at outcomes to determine whether or not we're moving people out of cars. Is that a fair assessment?
That's a fairly fair assessment. I mean, what happens when some of these improvements go in is there's so many external factors that relate to the performance of an improvement that you make that it's really hard to discern, you know, this XYZ impact has happened because solely of the improvement that's been made, or if there are other external factors, it's kind of hard to separate that out. But what we do is we do establish a dialogue with the cities that have approved these, including San Jose. And you know, it's a continued iterative process to try to get the best value and the least impact from the projects that are going in.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, one of the items that's on the California Transit Association's legislative program is to look at the legislation associated with this. I'd also mention that per the General Manager's direction, we will be looking at these criteria in the standing committees, and that'll be an excellent input into those conversations that we're having with the legislature as we move forward.
Okay, so I think what I hear you both saying is that we're not likely to change anything until we get direction from the state. Is that right?
These are state mandates that we're following to a large extent.
I would just like to add, though, even though there are state mandated elements that we adhere to, we haven't stopped there. I mean, we have instituted a voluntary contribution program, which San Jose has actually participated in as well, where we, you know, when we have something that's determined to be significant but unavoidable impact, generally in the past, that's been something that's just you check the box and nothing is done. The cities we've been working with on these plans, including San Jose, we recognize that there are things we can do even though you can't totally mitigate the impact. And so the voluntary contribution program has actually been going in that direction. So we are continually trying to refine this and continually trying to see what we can do to improve the process and not just be limited to the exact minimum requirements of the legislation.
I guess where I'm going with all this, I'll just sort of show my cards and then I'll shut up, I promise. It seems to me if we're moving to a world in which we really care about constraining the growth of VMT and hopefully even reducing it, given, I guess, what this morning's news was pretty sobering about what's going on with climate change right now and the fact that we're underestimating the impacts. I'm hoping that we're going to move to a plan that's actually going to require cities to affirmatively mitigate for any increase in vehicle miles traveled in a more concrete way, and that is somehow or another going to have teeth to actually meet performance. And I mean more than just installing crosswalks. Really fundamentally, it's about the decisions that we're all making with our land use. And cities are choosing to expand and allow another 1 million square feet of R&D and office and saying, well, if we just build 400 or 500 units of housing, that should be great. But what we know is that that 1 million square feet is going to create a housing need for 2,500 employees. And it seems to me that what we're hearing more and more from MTC and ABAG, and I think what's going to emerge from the CASA process, and ultimately I expect will be part of some state legislation, is there's going to be an expectation for congestion management agencies like ours to actually step up and have a role in telling jurisdictions, if you don't want to grow, that's fine, but if you want to grow in this way, that is adding office, R&D, and employment capacity, you better build the housing too, because we can't possibly tax ourselves fast enough and build transportation improvements fast enough to catch up with bad land use planning, which has been sort of the norm in this county. And as long as we have a county where people live in one part of the county and work somewhere else, we will continue to be overwhelmed by awful traffic and a housing crisis. And those twin devils will continue to bedevil us. And so I am hoping that as we think about what's happening from the state, we will be proactive in how we consider these deficiency plans, or whatever we're calling them, multimodal plans, and take the opportunity to weigh in not just about requiring the crosswalks, but actually telling jurisdictions, if you really want to expand like this, then you need to build the housing too. And so anyway, I'll get off the soapbox, and I'm happy to hear from my colleagues. Director Chavez?
Sam, could you give an example of how your idea could be operationalized with this kind of grant?
Yeah, I mean, we are, right now, there's a lot of discussion at the MTC level about how we tie transportation dollars to jurisdiction, to an individual city's willingness to bear their responsibility for housing through the OBAG program, for example. It seems to me that's an important carrot. We should also be using sticks, and jurisdictions want to get these plans approved so they don't lose state dollars, and I can't remember the source of the dollars. Is it STIP, Jim, or
For
SDA?
the CMP money, the CMA money, it comes from gas tax subventions.
Okay.
The first gas tax.
Right. So if we were to tell jurisdictions, look, if you want to build all this industrial or whatever capacity, that's great, but we're not going to approve your plan unless you actually build a balanced community, meaning you need build the housing that this employment land is going to create a demand for, then individual cities would have a financial incentive to do the right thing, which is bear the responsibility for building housing.
So part of the reason I asked is that I think that one of the big opportunities that we have here is we have our own bonds and our own money, and I think it's worth a discussion with the board about what we can do locally with the money that we have that is within our control, because I do think you raise a really good point, and I don't disagree, and I feel like the problem's so big and that in some respects having really concrete things that we can bite off, chew, and do at a local level is going to be what leads at a state level. Like, I don't think it's going to be the other way around. Although I have to say the state's been amazing with some of the big picture perspectives they've given us and policies that they've given us. But in a way, if we want people to adopt strategic innovations, if we innovate them locally, they're more likely to get adopted statewide, because I don't think it's just our county. It's everybody's kind of literally a hot mess. So
We're just a hotter mess.
Right. No, I'm not sure that's true, frankly. But all that being said, I think I've been thinking a lot about that as well, and maybe it's something we just have to, as a board, be a little brave with our own cities. All of us are from places that make bad decisions.
Yeah.
Sometimes we vote yes on them. So, anyway, just
Yes.
a thought.
Agreed. I absolutely agree with that thought. I also agree that there is a role for all of us on this board, and certainly through City Association and other forums, to really see if we can collectively come up with a principled way for figuring out how we can grow in a way that's more sustainable. Director Kemmis?
Yes, I would be remiss. We actually had the city manager during our CMPP meeting discuss their plans and on this issue as well. And I did make it clear at that discussion that we need to be building more transit-oriented projects and things like that. But I think let's say that they felt that they were moving in the right direction. I think even John kind of laid in on them as well. But I think your sentiments being heard in the committee meetings as well, Mayor. So.
Thank you. Other comments, Director McAllister?
Yeah, one comment. I'll boast a little bit. The committee was quite impressed with the City of Mountain View's CMPP plan. The multimodal plan. Two members from San Jose were both impressed, and they came out and gave us a couple of attaboys. So anybody from our staff, yes, I was quite proud to hear those two comment on how nice it was and how well it was received and how easy it was to be understood.
Yes.
And nice pictures in it, too.
And they're beautiful pictures, Director McAllister. If I could pick on you for a moment, because Mountain View clearly has been a great example of embracing a lot of housing development we know in the north section of the city. Even in that very good example, and you have a city that is very imbalanced toward jobs for historic reasons. I know you had nothing to do with that, but that's how it got. As I understand, under the plan that you've got, you're going to add about 15 to 17,000 housing units that was being considered, at least in the document that I saw here, but add another 7 million square feet. And if you think about the existing jobs to housing balance, I'm not sure even 15 to 17,000 housing units in that plan will make that housing to jobs balance any more balanced. In fact, it looks like it may be even slightly exacerbated to be worse. I know you're not necessarily going to go build out that full 7 million. I'm guessing you're just trying to get environmental clearance for it. But I just want to point to just how hard this is, and the fact that we've all got to be thinking a little differently about how we develop, because as cities, we are naturally inclined to say, we desperately want these jobs, we want the tax revenue, we want to certainly be supportive of industries that want to grow in our boundaries, and we all do it, each one of us. I think we're going to have to think differently, and I think it really has to start here on the VTA board, because we have the most capacity to really start to change the thinking in the region, because it is all tied to transportation dollars. So I very much appreciate the point you're making, Director McAllister, and I'm not in any way belittling what Mountain View is doing, because it's very substantial. I just think we collectively have a lot more work to do. Director Carr, did you want?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I completely agree with you, and I also want to applaud the way that you want us to be thinking about this regionally and not parochially and thinking about our own jurisdictions. I'm wondering, though, if sort of the reverse of what you're saying is also true, and that we do have some smaller communities that are on the edges of our county that the jobs housing imbalance is already the other way, and all of these state programs and perhaps what we're talking about, our own local program, are encouraging and only providing benefit to those that provide more and more housing. And so if communities and cities on the edges of our county are building and exacerbating their housing to jobs balance, we're actually making the commutes worse. We're putting more people out on the highways, and we're making congestion even worse. And we're incentivizing making that congestion even worse. So as we think about how we need to be more thoughtful and progressive and even aggressive about this, I think the reverse side of the same coin is part of the conversation that needs to be brought into it as well. And how do we as an agency bring perhaps more services to those communities so that we get those cars off of the freeways where there aren't a lot of other options except getting in the cars, and how do we work on that as, like I said, the reverse side of the same coin. But I agree with you. As an agency, we need to think about these things. I appreciate, again, I'm going to say it for the second time, the direction that you've led us in about thinking about regionally and the county as a whole, and not just our own jurisdictions, because that's the only way we're going to work our way out of some of these things. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Director. Andrea?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and thank you all for the feedback on the MIP. As you all know, we put out the guidelines, and the cities follow those guidelines. One of the areas that we're going to be focusing on in response to the need of not just thinking about outputs, which is basically what our checklist, we have a checklist of about 8 items that the cities go through, make sure that they have met every single item on that checklist. They submit the plan and expect that plan to be adopted. That we not just think about it in terms of outputs, but then the outcomes, and introduce an element of a performance measure that is in here. Granted, the plan hasn't been implemented, so it's hard to draw data, but at least sets all the cities on a path to start creating indicators as to how they're going to achieve what they have stated as the desirable outcome of this major development. So we will take a look at our checklist and modify it accordingly so we can tie in that one section on performance.
Thank you. Other comments? Director McAllister, your light.
Just one follow-up. You're concerned about our building. Mountain View Council is well aware of the office space, and we take that into consideration as we go along, and so we're not carte blanche. We're very concerned about what we're building out there in office space.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Director. Okay, other comments? All right, then there is a motion, isn't there? I do, you're right. Mr. Beekman, thank you. Okay, that's just to both items? Yes. Okay. Mr. Beekman?
Hi, hopefully I can add one more piece to this puzzle, to this mix, that you're really considering multimodal improvement plans for Santa Clara County at this time, a lot of cities. And I think an important fact to remember, if it's applicable to yourselves, that, what was it, way back in 2010 or 2008 or maybe 12 or 14, somewhere along the line, VTA, you know, ridership was going way, way, way up, and it was just a part of a whole movement that was happening back in 2010 or so. And all of a sudden, in some reason, the VTA in Santa Clara County, it like kind of got cut off at the knees, and it just was asked to stop. And I hope you can really look into that time. And I think, you know, looking at the mistakes or whatever decisions were made at that time can be of help in these new plans for a whole holistic view of how to view transportation at this time. It really hurts me that I think part of the reasoning back in 2010 or so was that that was the start of the fracking boom. And yourselves at VTA, your gas consumption uses went way, way, way up. And it was a very difficult time for yourselves, I feel, that you slowly learned to get out of by about 2016 or so. But yet we were left then with low ridership and just kind of this dismal state we're now currently in. So, you know, I hope this can be of help if these words are correct and accurate. I hope they are, and I hope they can piece together this multi-model improvement plan that you're trying to build, and not worry about the term, what is it, displacement or whatever it is into the 2025s. Let's not treat that as a scary term. Let's all talk about it and get used to it and make it a nice term. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speakman. All right, on the motion from Director Camus as to the two items, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. There was an aye. I heard it from Director Camus. All right, we're on to the General Manager report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good evening to all. I'd like to start my report with an update on the Easy Fare. As some of you may recall, we have the Easy Fare mobile ticketing app. We rolled it out with the opening of Levi Stadium. It was the intent was to provide those who were attending events in Santa Clara County the ability to download the fare for that event, and it's tied in also to Caltrain. What we have done, we have expanded the use of it, and now you can download a day pass and a single ride fare on your smartphone. So as of today, that increase in utilization has gone up significantly. For the third quarter of this calendar year, there were approximately 40,000 or 38% higher revenues as a result of people downloading and using Easy Fare. Year-to-date revenue is $300,000, which represents about 1.2% of our transit fare revenue. The number of monthly Easy Fare users purchasing tickets have also increased from 927 in January of this year to 3,700 in the month of September. This increase, of course, correlates with the number of major events that are held at Levi Stadium. But we also see that the ability of customers to just get the single pass, especially if they're visiting, and download the app and just get the single pass for the day or the day pass has become a very high convenience. Trip passes were approximately 160,000, or about 0.6% of our VTA ridership. I now want to move on to some of the events that took place in October. They're on your slides. The first one was the Powwow. Powwow is a public art mural event that takes place in San Jose, and we were asked to contribute a bus that could be painted. But before this beauty happened, it's the theme for this bus was Under the Sea. But before this happened, there were a number of school-age children that were invited to come in. They were handed spray paint cans, and they decided to decorate the bus in their own imaginative, creative way. And then it was covered over by this final design. However, not all was lost, because photos were taken of the kids' arts, and those will be available for them. We also celebrated the end of Hispanic Heritage Month, which ran from September 15 to October 15. We held a symposium at lunchtime at our River Oaks facility and had the pleasure of a really nice conversation with that was coordinated by our Cindy Chavez on our board, and we had Veronica Goyi from Grail Family Services together with former VTA board member Javier Campos and Esther Perales Diekman from Nextdoor Solutions. So I would like to thank Cindy for being there, and again, thanks to the VTA staff that organized these events. Last Friday, we recognized Breast Cancer Awareness Month with a walk along our Guadalupe River Trail. And in honor and celebration of our survivors, we had a couple of our VTA employees who are survivors. One of them is in the audience, Heidi Samuels, that we joined. And it was really a wonderful event. Most of the individuals turned out for it. And it was not only an opportunity to get some fresh air after a long week, but to say that we are in support, and we will do everything we can, not only to support our employees, but to support a cure to this cancer. In November, now today's the first day, so this month we have several other activities. Veterans Day. This one is going to be particularly special. It's the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. And 15 honor flight veterans who served on World War II or the Korean War are going to fly in from different parts of the U.S. to San Jose to join in the parade. They'll be riding on a VTA bus during the parade, so that is not only a distinction for us, but yet again, we are joining with all of our veterans in Santa Clara County and beyond on what has become one of the largest Veteran Day parade in the U.S. Turkey Trot follows on its heel on Thanksgiving Day, and we're encouraging all of our employees to participate. It's an opportunity for employees to come together, but also to stay healthy and be active. And now I would like to invite Rael Manlapas from our Revenue Services who's our Revenue Services Manager, works in our Finance and Budget Division. And Rael is going to give you all an update. Last month, I had indicated that we wanted to bring all of you up to speed with what was going on with the new contract that the MTC entered into with Cubic to create the next generation of our Clipper Fair program. So, Rael?
Thank you, Nuria, and good evening, members of the board. So, I'll be providing a quick 3-slide summary of MTC's C2 Next Generation Regional Fair Payment System Integrator Award, and I also have here to my right Jason Weinstein from MTC, who will help answer any questions at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So the C2 procurement process began in April 2016 with the issuance of a request for expression of interest, proceeded with the release of a draft RFP and for industry review, and then a final RFP in September 2017. The RFP received a single response, and after 2 rounds of best and final offers, or BAFOs, MTC on September 26th, 2018, awarded the contract to Cubic Transportation Systems, Inc. Cubic, who began in 2009 as a Clipper program systems provider and operator, will now be responsible for C2's design, development, and testing, installation and transition, and operations and maintenance over the 22 participating transit operators for at least the next 10 years under the C2 program. The contract award was for a total of $461 million. That includes capital cost, 10-year O&M, sales tax, and a 15% contingency. Next slide, please. The C2 system will include new features, including an integrated mobile app expected late 2020 that would function as a virtual Clipper card, enabling users to immediately add value into their accounts. Also, under the accelerated deployment phase, the current 3 to 5 day delivery delay of add value orders processed via the web will be significantly shortened to within an hour. Because VTA has newer DC3s or SID5 devices on board our buses, VTA customers could see improvements with the timing of their orders by late 2019. Next slide, please. Notice to proceed was issued on September 27, 2018. Within the next 90 days, stakeholders will be reviewing project schedules, deliverables, milestones, and holding regular project meetings with Cubic. A kickoff meeting is scheduled tomorrow with stakeholders to begin with the C2 design, development, and testing phase of the project. Subsequent discussions with respective VTA departments will be held further to define the technical solutions needed in order to successfully transition into C2. Included in these discussions would be an overall customer transition plan to ensure minimal disruption and a seamless transition to an account-based system. The Clipper infrastructure and all 22 participating operators are expected to be transitioned to C2 by 2024. I told you it was brief, so that concludes my brief summary of MTC's C2 Next Generation Regional Fair Payment System Integrator Award.
Are there any questions? Oh, we have.
I think there's a card from the public. Okay. General Manager, like to wrap up?
Yeah, well, if there are no questions on the Clipper, I'll move on to the remainder of my report. No, there is a question on Clipper?
Should we take the public comment first, or we just?
Yes, he's there.
Okay, great. Okay, Mr. Beekman.
Thank you for taking my comment. I'm not so sure about this issue, but it's my personal feeling that the Clipper card, it's been very difficult for me. I haven't been happy with how the Clipper card has proceeded at first. You've really pushed it upon the public, and I don't think it's, I think you needed to come about it just a lot more softer. And you recently started, if you use your Clipper, you get a free ride or something like that, and 2 fares for 1, some sort of thing. That has helped me like the Clipper card a lot more. I mean, you forced a system of technology on people that I don't think we had to, and I know you want that push, and you're pushing for it, but it should have been something that just slowly developed over time, but instead you just pushed it upon the public, and I'm not happy how the Clipper card has worked out. I think it'll balance itself out in 10 years or something like that, and I just wish you had more of that time to think about it instead of your big push that you had with it. So that's my personal feelings, and I don't like technology. I don't like data collection. I'm really, I'm sorry to say, I have to be really adamant and have good ideas about its protection and use, and and that's minimalism. That's the key phrase, I guess. Is I really like the concepts of minimalism with technology, and to learn how to practice that is important at this time of our lives, I think. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions on Clipper, thank you both, Raylan and Jason. I will now move on to item 8.1A, which is the Government Affairs Update, and you will find that information in your reading folder. The next item is 8.1AX, and I'm going to ask Brandy Childress to provide you all with an overview of our Community Outreach and Public Engagement Program.
Thank you, Nuria. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to VTA's overall community outreach and public engagement efforts. In about 6 minutes, I will touch upon what we do, why we do it, and how we reach and engage the public. My team partners with departments throughout the organization, like planning, engineering, operations, and construction, to include the voice of the communities to the projects, programs, and initiatives that VTA delivers. We outreach to the public as early as when a project is just a concept. We engage during the planning phase of a project where public input is critical to better shaping the deliverable. We are on the ground during construction, and most definitely there when the ribbon is cut. The Community Outreach and Public Engagement Team, or COPE for short, is the conduit between VTA and the public. Our process is a vital part of building better projects, and the benefits of it are well documented. It is a two-way relationship that delivers a better outcome for all stakeholders and creates community ownership. We recognize that these stakeholders have intimate and unique knowledge about the community's history, culture, current needs, and future vision for their community that all need to be a part of the process in delivering mobility solutions. Sorry, that was part of that one. All right. We begin this process on first deciding where we need to land on the spectrum of public participation. There is a range from informing to empowering the public, which has varying levels of public influence. For capital projects and service updates, we tend to fall further to the right of the spectrum, involving and collaborating with the community to gain feedback and insight into the planning, designing, and engineering phases. My team creates a plan that incorporates innovative and effective ways to reach and engage our intended audiences. What we implement is done as early as possible, and we engage as often as possible. The strategies are targeted towards what will work best with the community involved, and the tools we use are dynamic to help us reach our intended goals. Before I talk about some of the more successful strategies that have worked for us, I wanted to share with you the extent of the tools that we have in our toolbox. It is tempting when the only tool you have is a hammer to treat everything like a nail. This is something that Nuria reminds me quite a bit. We all know a hammer is not the most appropriate tool for every purpose, and I just wanted to assure you that we have more than a hammer in our toolbox. This is literally a list of tools that we go through when we are creating our plan, deciding what tools are going to align best with the community we're serving. The COPE team uses all the fundamentals to keep growing and nurturing our relationships with the community by all the traditional ways you saw on the earlier slide, but I wanted to provide just a few examples of what really seems to be working well now. Door-to-door is still an obvious and effective way to get someone's attention, but it's very time intensive. Our reach into communities have improved using the neighborhood social media platform Nextdoor. In fact, VTA was the first public transit agency to be made allowed to share information this way, which gave us access to target specific neighborhoods with important updates. I call that the virtual door hanger. Another basic fundamental of any public organization is the public meeting, as you all know. These are often competing with life, family time, gym workouts, other events, etc. Knowing this, we have started streaming meetings so that people can watch them from the comfort of their own home or while traveling with their favorite handheld device. Additionally, webinars have allowed VTA to reach audiences that may not otherwise be able to attend public meetings and get the detailed information those meetings offer. We are also meeting people on their own turf. We have had really good recent success with pop-up meetings held right on a corner where we are looking to improve the street, for example, or getting on a bus stop and talking to riders about their experience. When we do host a public forum, we have changed the format to workshop-style meeting where members of the public have a real chance to participate in an accessible, interactive way. Putting VTA subject matter experts next to the community in which the two can have a balanced exchange of ideas is an excellent strategy to empower the public. This worked extremely well during the number of meetings we held for the transit redesign effort. That gray blob that you see there with the red and green dots is a screenshot of a crowdsourcing map that was generated from public comment on one of our corridor studies. Crowdsourcing is an innovative approach to soliciting input via geographic locations from a large group of people, especially from an online community. People can add spots to a location in the predetermined study area along the corridor map and vote, share, or comment on existing spots that people put on the map. Lastly, here, the multilingual street teams and translated materials have worked extremely well for public engagement. Meeting stakeholders where they are and how they prefer to be communicated with is necessary to be inclusive. This here is just one example of the numbers behind the reach and engagement we're seeing, and this is on one of the 3 complete street projects that we are helping to share with the public, this one being our Tasman corridor, which spans parts of the cities of Sunnyvale, Santa Clara, San Jose, and Milpitas. You will see that we are using both traditional tactics like mass mailings and public meetings and a digital approach using all the social media platforms that are available to us. You'll see here again that Nextdoor continues to be a great workhorse for us, giving us access to over 110,000 people for us to engage with. And I think most impressive here is the results of the online survey, which are over 8,000 responses. This truly shows engagement in the process. And this here is my last slide, the team behind all the effort that is going into community engagement. And if I may say, they all do a fantastic job, and I'm very pleased and appreciate their hard work that they do with our community very much. So with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Take any questions you have.
Any questions for Brandy? I thought it was important, Mr. Chair and members of the board, to have this presentation as a background, because we will be talking about outreach and efforts throughout the year and next year as projects come in line and plans are being socialized through the various communities. If there are no questions, thank you, Brandy.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to invite Carolyn.
Excuse me.
Oh.
There's a public comment coming in.
Yeah, I think I'll take public comment at the conclusion of the general manager's report.
Okay. So I would like to invite Carolyn Gonat, Dennis Radcliffe, and Brandy, if you just stay put, for an update on the BART project.
Good evening, board members. Tonight we'll be covering both Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the BART program. This is going to be a little bit more detail than I've provided in recent briefings. I thought it would be important to take a moment and identify some of the accomplishments that the project has achieved. First of all, the stations construction at Milpitas and Berryessa are complete. Notwithstanding the challenges we still have with regard to the communications systems that I reported on last month, the stations are complete, and essentially the contractors are wrapping up at this time. On Montague Widening Project, which is a companion project to the BART program, it's now complete. This is a project that we initiated in coordination with the County of Santa Clara, the Santa Clara Valley Water District, and the City of Milpitas. It has added additional lanes on Montague Expressway from Highway 680 all the way to Capitol Avenue. It also included the creation of the South Milpitas Boulevard extension through the Milpitas Station area, connecting South Milpitas across Montague Expressway all the way to Capitol Avenue. With regard to the communication systems that I reported on last month, I'd like to just give you a quick update, is that we have ordered all the equipment. Most of it is on site. We expect to have all of it on site by the end of this month. To the extent that we have components ready to assemble into larger units, we will be bench testing that starting next week. And we're progressing as planned, notwithstanding the recovery schedule that we're having to implement. With regard to all the other facilities that were created by the project, we are concluding our coordination with the municipalities for the facilities we'll be turning over to them, which include operations and maintenance agreements with each organization for the roadways and their utilities. And similarly, we have a program underway to conclude that work with the private utilities. So this is a little bit harder to read than I expected, but the schedule for completing the project is as follows. What you see here is a simplified schedule. The primary activities, there's light blue activities that are being conducted under VTA. Those are VTA responsibilities. And the dark blue activities are responsibilities that BART will be carrying out, leading to revenue service. The three bars of VTA activities represent approximately 38 separate testing programs, regimens. They are typically conducted in a more serial nature, but given the challenges we've had with the communication systems, we've overlapped them a great deal, so they're essentially occurring simultaneously in some cases. The main point here is that testing program is continuing, notwithstanding that we have not replaced the non-compliant equipment. All of that will conclude in late January with the last bit of retesting, which is one series of testing regimen on the train control system, which is interoperable with the communications and other systems that will have been completed at that time. Following that, we will move the project test center to BART's Operations Control Center in Oakland. And at that point, BART will be in possession of the completed works and will carry out their full responsibilities. That's in two phases, or two stages, I should say. What's called Phase 3 Systems Integration Testing. This is the period of time where BART will be incorporating the extension into their operating environment. In other words, connecting our extension into their railroad. A lot of that work occurs in the Operations Control Center, and all of the different operation movements are practiced and tested and trained in the Operations Control Center. Once that is under completion, BART will conduct pre-revenue service, and pre-revenue service will again repeat all of those operational movements and train operators and all the other passenger service personnel that are required to put the system into service. The gray bars represent the FTA schedule contingency. This is approximately 3 months that we don't plan to use, but was included in our request for an extension to FTA. So when you look at passenger service, we are planning to put the project in passenger service sometime in Q4 of 2019. The light blue and dark blue bars represent our plan, and it is our hope that we will be able to put the project into revenue service as early as October 1st. However, given the experience we've had and FTA's advice, we have 3 additional months should things change over time. So this schedule is the schedule that we will be reporting against as we go forward, and we'll be tracking our project progress and reporting it in this summary level here at our board meetings. One caveat here is that this is our plan, and it is subject to review and scrutiny by FTA and their subject matter experts starting on November 7th. And barring any changes that they might insist on, this would be the schedule that we'll be reporting against. With regard to the operations and maintenance agreement, Carolyn here can add details, but generally we're progressing to conclude those negotiations, and we hope to bring the completed agreement for approval sometime in January or February next year. For Phase 2, the project team has preparing an expression of interest to be submitted to FTA. This expression of interest is our formal request to be admitted into FTA's expedited project delivery pilot program, and we hope to submit that this month. In January, we will be bringing a recommendation for a selection of a general engineering consultant. The general engineering consultant will be the service provider that will provide all of the engineering needed to support our formal application for funding or request for funding to FTA later next year. And that generally requires the development of a 30% design and a cost estimate to match, and certainly the details of the project configuration. And so in late 2019, we'll be submitting a formal request for funding in the EPD expedited program delivery pilot program with FTA. Throughout that period, if we're admitted, and we expect to be, FTA will be coordinating with us to assure that when we make our final request, it will be successful. And the current approach that VTA has with the configuration of our project, we believe we have an opportunity to be successful in this regard. And I'm going to turn this over to Brandy to talk about our public engagement program.
I promise this is the last time you're going to see me tonight. Let me see that. You got the remote?
Sorry.
Thank you. All right. As you are all aware, VTA's BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 extension is 6 miles long with 4 stations, 3 underground and 1 above, featuring a 5-mile tunnel. We've taken the project corridor and broken it into 9 project areas, as you see here on this map. These include the 4 station areas, the 2 portals, the 2 ventilation facilities, and the maintenance facility. With the single bore tunnel decision made earlier this year, the vast majority of this project will occur underground or out of the public right-of-way. The image to the right is the rendering showing our single bore tunnel and the underground downtown station that will be constructed off-street behind a construction fence, very similar to typical development projects. The picture on the left shows the current construction, which is a new development, Miro, just across the street from San Jose City Hall. Although the single board decision has greatly reduced the anticipated impacts, a construction project of this magnitude will have some level of disruption, and the VTA team is developing a program to address this. We are establishing a construction outreach management program. This is not only the technical commitment we made in the environmental document, but a commitment we have made to the community to be thoughtful, thorough, comprehensive, and collaborative when it comes to building this project with the community. This overall program includes 3 major components you see here, and tonight I'm going to speak to the construction, education, and outreach plan. The work done to date and planned, although fitting neatly on this one slide, is in no way representative of the heavy lift or the importance of this effort. We are breaking the CEOP into parts that follow the major phases of the project. Part A is underway and provides the framework for the overall plan. It was developed with the involvement of our city partners and community working group members. After the first of the year, we'll begin to develop Part B in earnest that focuses on pre-construction activities such as utility relocation and building demolition. Part C will then be developed for the major construction phase by late 2021. There are 5 key elements to the CEOP, and I will explain each one with its own slide, but here they are for you. They're listed. General outreach is being conducted with both broader audiences and communities located along the Phase 2 alignment to raise visibility and raise visibility about the commitment we've made to deliver the next 6 miles of BART Silicon Valley. This is being done through mailers, flyer drops, public meetings, tabling events, both traditional and social media, webinars, and other outreach tools to keep people informed. The stakeholder engagement component is focused on identifying individual stakeholders most impacted by the project area and nurturing those relationships. We have begun early engagement related to the real estate acquisition process and field work. We are doing this through the many great partnerships we have with our community working group members, our city partners, and we're also leveraging CWG's vast networks to bring people to the table. We are conducting door-to-door intake, tours, and presenting at other people's meetings like neighborhood and business associations. The first visible field work on VTA's BART Phase 2 has started. Geotechnical and utility data is required to further develop design plans for the stations and the tunnel. This is being achieved through soil sampling and utility investigations, which require truck equipment and short-term intermittent lane closures at various sites. The work will continue through early next year, sans the city holiday and roadway moratoriums. For this specific work, we've reached over 23,000 people since August using a combination of mass mailing, email, and door-to-door outreach. For those close to the work, our goal is to notify them 3 times. We mailed a notice a month prior to the work when it was scheduled to begin. As the schedule becomes more predictable, we then go out into the field and flyer and speak directly with stakeholders approximately 2 weeks from when the work will begin, and then a third touch point 72 hours before to advance and to confirm the schedule with them. Questions have been raised about how impacts will be addressed specific to small businesses along the corridor. This will be done through small business marketing and assistance programs. The goal of this focus area and key part of the COP is to support and sustain small businesses' economic health during and after construction. We are incorporating best practices and lessons learned from other federally funded mega projects around the country, such as Los Angeles, Seattle, and Dallas. Many transit agencies have taken a proactive approach towards mitigating construction impact to businesses rather than a reactive long-term funding arrangement for potential business interruption claims. Programs that keep stakeholders informed of activities that may affect residents and business owners, help customers get around, and promote neighboring events are paramount mitigation tools. We are in early discussions with our partners at the county, city, the Downtown Association, the various chambers, and other small business advocates to establish these marketing, business, and technical assistance programs and tools that will support business owners. These programs will go hand in hand with a fourth focus in our construction, education, and outreach plan, which is placemaking. Placemaking aims to enhance awareness and access during construction while providing exposure to impacted businesses and increase positive public sentiment. This is done through organized events, pop-up events, space activation, public art, and really good wayfinding signage to make sure people can connect with these exciting experiences and have a presence in the area. On the radar is not really a formal part of the COP, but it's an important effort to coordinate with other projects in the area on messaging and communications. We heard the San Jose City Council loud and clear, particularly Councilmember Prowlis and Councilmember Davis, that coordination with other development would be key, and we couldn't agree more. We are plugged into various meetings, such as the city's monthly downtown construction coordination meeting and the Arena Entertainment and Operations Committee, for example. When we establish our field offices before construction begins, these would be great spaces for representatives from all development projects to convene and share information with each other and the public. This is my last slide, but not the last time I will provide updates on these efforts. We anticipate coming back to the board as we get through some of the next steps on the project related to real estate planning and ongoing fieldwork investigations. My team's area of focus related to these efforts will be more general outreach, more of the same saturation of information that I reported on earlier, including hosting another webinar to share what is now happening. We also have plans to establish those field offices and have dedicated staff hours in the field. The stakeholder engagement, we're looking forward to launching a new customer portal that will help with our intake efforts and data collection. We will continue to outreach about the field work and partner on various efforts to gain permission to enter for continued testing. And then lastly, we have more meetings with partners planned and more research to do, which also includes surveying businesses to define parameters and inform construction contracts under the Small Business Marketing and Assistance Programs. Thank you again for your time. We can entertain questions at this time.
Yeah, are there any questions regarding the SBRT project or the outreach at this phase of the project? Okay. Then, Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Wonderful, thank you.
Question for
Thank you, Narian. One question, Director McAllister?
Yeah, sorry. I just noticed under your VTA Transportation Authority preliminary key performance indicators, you have absenteeism, and I was surprised. I apologize for hadn't noticed that before, but you have absenteeism. Why is that there, and do these numbers correspond to comparable to other agencies?
Okay, so are you referring to the ridership information? No, you're showing me something, but I don't know where.
Okay,
section.
this was
Yes.
one side, and then this is on the back side.
Yes, right. So it's on the ridership report that was in the folder?
Yeah, I guess so.
So we report a series of criteria. Some of those criteria are required by the National Transit Database, which gets fed into the federal government database of information. In terms of absenteeism, how this relates to other transit systems, either in the region or the nation, I do not have that information, but we'd be happy to provide it.
Okay. So the federal government is asking for...
The National Transit Database is the database of a series of data that's collected from transit agencies, and it serves to provide funding to the agencies. So we report our performance in terms of the miles between mechanical failure on our buses. We service recovery. There's just a whole host of, like, these are just several, the main ones of many other elements that we provide reporting on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, other questions? Okay, Mr. Beekman?
Hi, I wanted to talk about a few items on 8.1. Your public safety data, you've handed out, you've listed misdemeanor, total incident reports, misdemeanors, felonies, other. Does this have to do with warrant situations at all? I think you should learn how to make that clear for us as the public. I think, Bart and the media are now starting a relationship together that's, I think, becoming frustrating, and I'm not liking the direction of it at all. I didn't like it when they started this a few years ago, right before the Trump administration, when they had hired a new police chief, and I think our entire system of law enforcement in the Bay Area has gone downhill ever since that time, and I think we really over-policed and over-addressed issues at that time that didn't need addressing, and that could have been handled in much more mellow ways, and we've since erupted, and I think we're now learning how to calm that now, and I just hope we learn some important lessons from that. And I think being clear and not giving these kind of weird facts can help all of us, and I hope we can work towards those standards, and it's just how to make a smarter process for all of us. And, then that comes up with the customer service ideas. I thank you incredibly for that. I think you started doing that about the same time I first started coming here. And I think, I've been really impressed by some of the things of the VTA. And, I'm learning to appreciate your work, where I came in really skeptical at first. So I thank you for this work. It could hopefully bring the sort of lessons needed for other cities in Santa Clara County, including San Jose. And I guess that's about it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beekman. All right, we're moving on now to Chairperson's report. It is time to consider, it will be time next month, to consider board leadership for 2019. Happily, you won't have me to kick around anymore. We're going to elect our board chair and vice chair for one-year term. According to board policy, we rotate these positions among representative groups. So for the 2019 term, the board chair shall be selected from any of the small city representatives. I think that would be really non-San Jose city representatives, not to suggest diminutive stature of any city. And the board vice chair will be selected from the County of Santa Clara. Those eligible for election are those who will be serving on the VTA board in 2019 and 2020. Any eligible member who wishes to serve should send a letter of interest to me, and I would appreciate if you might copy Elaine, our board secretary. That would ensure that everyone gets it. At our December meeting, I'll announce those who have shown an interest in serving. We'll take nominations from the floor as well, and then we'll elect the chair and vice chair for 2019. The newly elected chair and vice chair will take office on January 1st, 2019, and we'll have a big party. All right. I want to remind my colleagues the next board of directors meeting is on Thursday, December 6th at 5:30, and will be held here at board chambers. And so far, I believe we have expressions of interest for board vice chair from Director Chavez and for board chair from Vice Chair O'Neill. So that's what's going on now. Feel free to submit additional letters. All right, any questions on 8.2? Okay, on to 8.3. Are there any items of concern referral to the administration? Items. Yes, Director McAllister.
Yeah, I'm still learning the ropes here on the thing, but items of concern. On 6.5, the concern I had was about our reserves, and I'd sort of, who do I ask to say, hey, what's going to happen once those reserves are potentially run out? What's the board's direction? Is there any written guidelines? I know we're doing the ad hoc committee to try to get a handle on the financing, but who do I get a better feel for if things end in 24 months? That what are we going to do, or do we reallocate money, and is there a process among the board that will do some of this guidance?
If I may, Mr. Chair, at the Administrative and Finance Committee, we give periodic updates on the status of our budget, and clearly reserves is part of that. So what we will be doing is, as the staff identifies the condition of the budget, we'll bring a recommendation to the board to whether either consider using reserves to mitigate that budget condition or take any other actions. So there is a process. If you would like, offline, we could provide additional information on the 3 reserves that our Chief Financial Officer described earlier. But there's a process that we follow, and the Administrative and Finance Committee is where the recommendations will come, and then those will subsequently come to the board for further discussion.
Thank you.
Could I also just make a suggestion? I appreciate Director McAllister's concerns because we know we've got challenges ahead. I know we will be having the ad hoc committee's report coming to us in December. Is that right, Director Broads? Sort of.
We are working on some scheduling
Okay.
because we had one member who cannot make the November meeting, and then our December meeting is actually afterwards, and so we're trying to we're trying to work it out.
Okay, we're working that out.
We're working it.
I just ask staff to consider whether it might be appropriate during the time of that report to also provide some additional context around our reserves, since I think they're all closely aligned. It might be helpful. Anyway, thank you.
Just, and if I could add one other thing, this is Cindy, I would just recommend that in addition to that, that once the ad hoc committee comes back, or whatever the process is, that we do take a little bit of time just to walk people through with a little bit of a historic lens, because I know what it feels like to be new on the board, and I felt new for about 2 years or 3 years, and some of you are just starting. So just if we could do that, I think that relates both to the really good point that the mayor raised around reserves, but also all the sources of funding that we have, and what are the significant risks ahead and opportunities in a way that reflects a little on what we've experienced in the past.
Thank you, Director Chavez. Any other comments? Okay, Mr. LeBrun, did you want to be heard on this item or a different item? Okay, come on up.
So I know that you cannot discuss this under a closed session because it's not agendized, but what I'm surprised is that you didn't, about the Measure B lawsuit, is that nobody mentioned the fact that they filed a petition for rehearing at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And I think that's going to have to be discussed at some point.
Thank you, Mr. LeBrun. Okay, we're on to item 8.4. These are unapproved minutes and summary. I'm sorry, Director Chemis, did you want?
No, that's interesting news about the Measure B lawsuit. I would love to get an update if staff has that available.
Yeah, that was followed by the litigant, obviously.
Yeah, that was followed by Ms. Jensen.
Yes.
So
right, the litigant,
that is basically just, it's, I think, merely procedural at this point, but rehashing the same basic argument to the same court to rehear it again. Yeah. So, but it shouldn't upset the timeline, because the court has the same 30 days during the time when it has to wait before the decision is done. So 30 days for them to respond to that.
Yeah, my experience has been there's a fairly low success rate of those petitions. Okay. Okay, item 8.4 is the information item relating to all the minutes and summary reports from VTA committees, joint power boards, and regional commissions. Mr. Beekman, you submitted a card. Is it specifically relate to those minutes? It does? Please come on up.
It's related to the multimodal reports to the TAC committee. Is that okay to talk about? I wanted to offer one more thought about the multimodal process.
Yeah.
TAC from that.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah. My other thought that I just had here tonight, that I think another big reason why the VTA went into a dive, to be honest, in the 2010s or so, was because I think of what we're now starting to experience is how can other individual startups and tech children invent interesting devices for all of us to create multimodal forms of transportation. And so I guess that was kind of the big issue here in San Jose. And then out of that, that's when the fracking booms just swept in here and just gobbled everything up that we finally have mellowed out and hopefully we've learned important lessons about. And I hope, so you guys, there's all these different factions that work within the VTA and everyone's real excited about some things. I just hope there's a commitment to things like inviting the union along to processes and things like taxi service. I think there's incredibly cool potential with working with the VTA, working with taxi service, yet there's another faction that's very much into how to practice with Uber and Uber's plans. And so I'm just trying to myself learn the ideas of balance in talking and being a part of this process that I hope there's room for everybody and everybody can have a good opinion, and that's what VTA has to work out here. So to learning and keeping it bright, just keep it bright and smart. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chatty? It's on the JPB.
My name is Omar Chatty. Thank you for the time. On the Caltrain JPB, I just wanted to give you an update on the death count, as I do every so often. So we're up to 310 people dead. We lost 2 more people in the last time I talked to you last month. So we're 310 since 1995, when the Caltrain trackway corridor, the 1864 trackway corridor, was designated to be for high-speed rail. So I'm hoping someday we can get smart, and the enlightened people on this board and others will push for BART to finish the final 30 miles, or at least start a feasibility study along the trackway Caltrain corridor, since now BART is focusing on its crime issue and its dirty trains. So, but the death count, like I said, last year and the year before, it just keeps counting. And I don't know what we can do. We're going to do grade crossings, but hopefully they'll be designed to accommodate BART in the future when enlightened public officials say we can finish that final 30 miles and have a 2-way train system, high capacity and everything else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chatty. Okay, we're on to announcements. Are there any? If not, we will go to closed session and we'll discuss items 9.1A through 9.1C during closed session. Come join us. assuming you did. I sent him a text message asking him, now, you did take it with you, right? It's not. Yeah, but yes, like I said, we could, and the closer we got to the down here, the Hi, everybody. We're out of closed session. All right, this meeting's adjourned. Thanks, everybody.